Hello, everyone. This is Marie Davis Markham and Robyn McGillis from Wildwood Running. We just wanted to pop on today because we recently read an article that possibly many of you have been able to read as well. It was an article in Runner's World called Helping Fast Teens Become Lifelong Runners, and it was written by Julia Lucas, and it came out on May 5th. And it really resonated with us. I remember reading this article and just being like, yep, yep. I thought about myself as a young athlete. I thought about myself as a high schooler, a middle schooler, collegiate, and myself now as a runner. It resonated with me so much because of what we're doing at Wildwood. And so I thought, Robyn, it would be fun for us to get together and just talk about what we thought of the article and maybe how it connects a little bit to Wildwood. So those of you who haven't read the article, hopefully you will get out and have a chance to. But just to kind of connect to the article a little bit, it really focuses on supporting young, fast runners, not necessarily just females, but the article does talk a lot about female athletes. And one way to support them is really to have a strong network, giving them the tools and the people around them that can lift them and support them, but also protecting them, remembering that they're young athletes as well. And then as they're navigating this career, really focusing on emotional shifts that they might have. So when you notice that emotionally they act differently or something changes, then maybe that's a sign that you need to watch out for. And then also just talking about really putting the person first and the athlete second, which we resonated with that for sure. And then the last thing is just having resources. Here we are as coaches, and we can't do everything. So being able to have a tool bag of people that you can pull from that can help support your athletes. And so, Robyn, I just felt like it really resonated with the work we're doing at Wildwood. And maybe we could have a conversation in that way today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I felt the same way. That's why we wanted to hop on here. And, at Wildwood, we're really all about empowering, supporting the young female athlete, and educating all female runners along their journey. And also the coaches that support those female runners. Because at Wildwood, we really truly believe it's about finding your own journey. And if you can find
Mhm.
your own journey, it empowers every part of that, and it'll go past that specific journey into your life. It branches out into all pieces of you as a whole person. So there's just so many connections between this article and what we're really after at Wildwood Running. So pretty cool to be able to when we read things like this, to be able to connect to them so well. And we've seen both as coaches and then just as spectators, a lot of athletes having great successes at young ages.
Mhm.
And Marie, you were one of those young athletes that had a lot of success early on. She was a six-time junior Olympic champion, six-time state champion in high school, and then went on collegiately to have a really successful career at University of Oregon, six-time All-American. So with all these accomplishments, what did your support network look like? What helped you kind of achieve this longevity of success
Right.
through your career?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me was absolutely the support network. And that's what Julia Lucas mentioned in the article. My parents, my coaches, they were just all about me as a person. And of course, they supported my running, but it was one of those things where they came together and really thought about how I could continue to improve along the way. I remember I've been talking to my mom and dad recently since we've started Wildwood, like, what were those conversations like? And they were very adamant that I ran very low mileage and that I had fun and that I loved it, and it never became all consuming. And so my coaches luckily were on that same plane as they were. And then as I transferred from high school, my high school coach was also my club coach, and then there were a couple other coaches in there as well, but they really found the joy in it for me. But then as I moved to college, I made sure I found a coach that had that similar viewpoint, and that transition was so easy, and it just gradually helped me continue to improve along the way. I remember my mom, would always say things like, "We love you no matter what happens." And so I never went into a race thinking, if I fail, if I blow up, if I don't succeed, then people are gonna not like me or whatever. And then also, I don't know how this happened, but I just had this long-term vision. I knew that in my mind that female runners peak at 28. And that was my number. And I don't know where I got that number or how I got that number. But when I was 16 and 17 years old in high school, I was like, I am not going to peak now. I'm going to make sure that I do all the work I can to continue improving every year. So, I probably ran 15 to 20 miles a week in high school, which was that was on my coaches, but I ran a lot of speed. We ran really fast with a lot of recovery. I wasn't doing a lot of miles. I was still running really fast, and that helped. But I had this vision that I was going to improve every single year until I got to my late 20s, which I was able to run until my late 20s. And that felt really good in itself. But having that support network and that vision of this isn't right now. There's a lot that people, I think, focus on, like, what can I do at this moment to be as fast as I can? But then they don't think about, well, how am I going to continue to add more along the way? That's a hard thing to do. So that really helps support me.
It is. And so how do you, kind of with that in mind, how do you, um, so that without turning that into an expectation now as a coach,
Right.
you know, how would you suggest people do that?
Yeah, and I think the best way is helping your athletes, whether they're extremely fast or whether they're out there for the love of it, know that you are there for them first, right? That you care about them, that they know that you would do anything for them, and whether they perform to a certain expectation of their own, it doesn't matter. You still care about them as a person. And I think really you want to be able to celebrate their successes, whether they're successes in performance, whether they're successes in drama or musicals or whatever it's going to be. Really focus on those things. And I think one thing we forget about is when we're in this running world, everyone's talking running. But I believe, and I've noticed at our team at Lincoln, like we only talk about running at practice or at a meet, but whenever we're away from it, we're not talking about running. We're talking about their friends and their siblings and what their parents are doing and their favorite foods. And so everything on our van trips and wherever we're going has to do with us as people. It's not about running. And I think that's really, really important. I mentioned earlier that my mom always said, I love you no matter what. And she actually pointed that out. She said, I would write you a little note every morning before a race, and I would say, I love you no matter what. You're my Marie. And so that, I think, is a way that we can approach our athletes as well. So how do you then help your athletes? Because you've been a coach for a while now, and how do you make sure that the encouragement that you're giving your athletes doesn't turn into expectation? Because that's one thing she talked about a lot in the article was this encouragement. Then sometimes people feel like this weight on their shoulders, these expectations. So how do you support your athletes in that way?
Well, a lot of what you said resonates with me for sure. I mean, I definitely, where I coach at Central Catholic, um, my athletes are involved with a lot of other things outside of
Mhm.
running. They're in student council, they're in equestrian, they're accomplished musicians. So, and I know all that, and I ask them about, oh, do you have this music competition coming up, or I'm going
Mhm.
to do this for equestrian, so they know that um, they feel through my question and my interest that I really value all those pieces of them,
Right.
not just the running piece of them. And similar to what you were saying with your mom, you know, I I I talk about the courage it takes just to line up on the line, and how
Mhm.
much I care about them just for that. Just how
Right.
inspire me just from showing up to practice every day, lining up on the line to run a hard race. And then one thing that you and I've talked about is really focusing on the process and encouraging pieces of that process. And I feel like as I've gone in my coaching career, I've gotten better at that, because
Mhm.
it's easy as a coach to slip down that slope of
Right.
focusing on the times, because they are impressive at, but like you said, they're fleeting, right?
Mhm.
And there's an ebb and a flow to it. So focusing more on, hey, I really, giving praise for how they got out hard in a race, or how they may have had a hard couple of laps, but then they came back into it and really, worked hard in the last two laps.
Right.
So just picking out pieces of the race beyond just the outcome to give them praise for, I think can be really
Yeah.
valuable, and shows that, again, you're not in it just for the outcome, you're in it for them to grow as a person, as an athlete, and how
Yep.
they approach it.
Yeah. Especially when, like, we see high schoolers, right? They've got a dual meet, an invitational, a dual meet, an invitational, like week after week after week. Having those process goals and things to focus on are really important.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yep.
one question we hear a lot, is it possible to run fast now and still find running rewarding later in life.
I think so. I mean, I think you would agree with me, right? Like, absolutely. And I think it's easier to have happen. That doesn't sound right. It's the best way is if someone's balanced, right? If they have a really well balanced life. If running is everything and the only thing they're focused on is performance goals, beating people, comparing themselves to their teammates, just navigating their running based upon everything else, then it is going to be a lot harder. But if they're really focused on, they love the sport, the joy, the community it brings together, then I really think finding a well-balanced, happy relationship with the sport is doable. And I mean, I still see myself getting really competitive, right? Like I'll go on a trail run and I'll start thinking like, "Ooh, what if I could run a little faster?" Or I can't really pop into a road race and just like chill out. I'm like looking at my watch, even though I'm not fast anymore. Like that's never going to leave. Like, but the joy of being a part of that still is there. And I think it's because the joy was there first before being fast. And I think that's really important. How have you been able to find running rewarding for yourself?
Yeah, I always, question every year, how am I still in this sport?
Yeah.
How do I still love it? But I do, as being a coach now for several years, it's a lot of hard work,
Yeah.
but I love it. And I think for me as a runner, first off, after I, graduated college, I moved to Oregon, and the community running was so strong here with club
Right.
teams and different cross country competitions and road racing, that I just plugged into some groups and really found some great friends. And again, it was all about the community of it.
Right.
And that just prolonged my, involvement in it. And then that just, went into segued into my coaching piece. It's like, how can I now, like I've accomplished a lot personally. I want to give back even more. And
Mhm.
coaching was just like a natural way to do that. And I just find so much joy in helping young athletes along their journey. And being a part of their journey, because you're just sort of there to like guide here and there, but ultimately you want them to be in charge of it. And it's consider it an honor to be able to do that. And it's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So at Wildwood, we don't just focus on the best athletes,
Right.
right? Our mission really has always been to support every female runner along her journey. We want more females to stay in the sport. There's definitely a drop off
Yeah.
junior year in high school, and so how can we support them, and how do you support those types of runners so that they find running rewarding, potentially for the rest of their lives?
Yeah. I mean, I think that comes back to just that joy, right? Finding that joy and that love, but also that drive too. Like it's fun to compete. Competing isn't the only thing, but it's fun to show up and, try and be the best version of yourself. But it's also great to be part of a community. So, and sometimes you have to work harder at creating that with your teams. And sometimes that comes super easy, right? It depends on the dynamics of the kids on your team. But doing that, I think, is going to help support anyone. I think back to my high school days, and we had some girls who were faster competing at the state meet, but maybe not in the top 100 at the state meet, who are now competing in Olympic trials in the marathon twice. One of them's an Ironman. So there is room for this, for anyone to grow and to anyone to keep loving the sport and putting in time and effort in whatever capacity they want later. It doesn't have to be right at adolescent, like at 18, or when you're going through puberty. It can be any time in the process. I know that we were just talking beforehand how you had a friend who ran hood to coast. I mean, was she in her 20s or 30s and then became this fabulous runner? So the joy can come at any point in time, and the joy can be different. My joy now in running is complete mental health. Like get me on the trail, get me by myself, maybe with a buddy, and just and think about my life and how I want to live it and how I want to be happy. And so I think that's really important, um, as well. So one thing we've been doing at Wildwood is, figuring out how to help girls be really balanced athletes, whether they're fast, whether they're in the middle, whether they're the back of the pack, right? So, what are some things that I just thought we'd tie in Wildwood here? What are some things kind of we've been doing with Wildwood, that you could share that is really focused in that area?
Yeah, not to toot our own horn, but we've done
Yeah.
some really cool things, and I think part of that is just because we've connected to some great people that are as
Mhm.
passionate female distance runners that are experts in their area, and they've opened our eyes, I think, in many ways to things that we didn't even realize were as important or needed
Mhm.
to develop those young female athletes. Um, the things that pop out for me immediately are, one, just helping those female distance runners really look at their identity,
Yeah, I
have
agree.
a balanced identity, so it's not so um, thinly focused, narrowly focused on being that elite or that top runner, but it's more of like, how are they a daughter? How are they a sister, a student?
Mhm.
What are other pieces that they would identify with, that if running went away tomorrow, if they got an injury, um, you know, what would they be able to? Do they have the resiliency to be able to manage through that? And I
Right.
think as coaches, we really need to ensure that and help facilitate that. Understanding their body
Yeah.
is a big one, and that path. And everyone, we've learned through experts that we've had come in and talk um, at our camps and our clinics, is that everybody's path is different, but having an understanding of the changes that happen during puberty, what's happening to your body during
Mhm.
having your cycle, um, just that knowledge is really empowering,
Right.
and takes away some of that maybe feeling of shame or uneasiness, and gives
Mhm.
power back to those female athletes. And then just really focusing on confidence, building confidence in these young, how can we, through building a community and bringing them into that community and providing knowledge, how can we help facilitate stronger, more confident females
Yes.
that feel good about themselves, whether they run later or they don't run later?
Right.
It was a positive point in their life that
Mhm.
gave them something that they carry on to other people.
And that confidence transfers so much into your running, right? If you're confident, if you're happy, if you're like confident and happy and your body's healthy, right? Like it's doing what it needs to do, you're probably going to run a lot faster
Yeah.
than if you're just so focused on a narrow focus like you're talking about. And I think that's important. But as a head coach, so how have you taken kind of some of the resources from Wildwood to create your own little toolkit? So if a girl comes to you with something, and here you are a coach, but you might not be a nutritionist or a psychologist or a PT, or like, what have you done to help yourself kind of support your athletes?
I just think, some of it's not rocket science
Mhm.
necessarily, but one is just um, facilitating more of those conversations. So, even it's something as simple as in the parent. This year's been a little bit of a different year. Obviously, we haven't done everything as we would in a normal year, but having more of those conversations about, um, we're going to talk about periods. Just
Mhm.
setting the tone for that. Like, this is a normal thing. We should have these discussions. Do you track your period? Where are you? If someone comes to me and says, I'm feeling a bit tired, I might say, hey, well, where are you on your cycle? Did you get enough fuel in your body today? Here's some things you might want to think about depending on
Mhm.
where you are in your cycle. Or maybe
Right.
you need a rest day, and just being encouraging that two-way conversation so they feel comfortable. They know they can come talk to me about it. And that also we might make a modification potentially, or I might have a suggestion, or be able to at least point them to a resource,
Right.
even if I know I'm not the expert in it.
Yep.
Um, so those are
Yeah.
just small but ways that I feel like I've grown as a coach just through the process of being a part of Wildwood.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I noticed like the she was talking about the NC State coach Lori Haynes, I'm not sure how you say her last name, but it really resonated with me, right? That she focuses so much on the whole athlete. And when I think about that, I really believe that that's probably why she's seeing so much success in her program, right? And also probably we're going to see those athletes continue to succeed so far beyond that because of this whole athlete approach. And, I've seen time and time again when I was in high school, my competitors, even in college and after, these one dimensional athletes, right? They've dropped everything to focus on running. Their nutrition is running, the way they think, the way they go to school, the way they hang out with friends, all of it's running based. And they see huge performance boosts, but they only last so long,
yeah,
right? They can't handle that. They can't, as young athletes, it's not something that's manageable for a long period of time, right? It's something that's quick, it's fast, And then after time, they're tired. And a lot of times I worry that these athletes are mirroring it after what they're seeing on social media, right? With what these professional athletes are doing who have given up their life for this sport, right? And are wonderful people, don't get me wrong, but they're a niche. They're this tiny little less than 1%, less than 0.5%, whatever it is, that are doing this work. And so that really resonated with me when I read and saw this work that she's doing with her teams. And I think it's important because if you're focusing on the whole athlete, when there's setbacks, when they're injured, when they're sick, when there's a year where they're maybe plateauing or regressing a little bit, they can deal with it and be ready to go. I think about one of my athletes a couple of years ago at Lincoln who was injured and she just couldn't get better, but she was so positive and she was realizing like she was looking at her injury as she would watch it improve along the way, even though it was like the tiniest little improvements. By the time she was healthy, she was ready to go and she blew our minds with what she could do performance wise. And I believe it's because she had the joy. She wasn't one dimensional and she had that confidence. So I think that's really cool as well. And I don't know if that resonated with you, that part of the article, or how you connected with that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things I was just thinking about as you were talking about her, um, she's had a great recruiting class over the last several years, and I think some of that may be because female athletes want that. That's what
Hmm.
they want. Like
Yeah.
you were looking at Oregon and where you wanted to go for your career. You wanted to connect with a coach that you knew
Yeah.
was going to treat you as a whole athlete and bring you along. And it's this is probably a testament to her approach.
Yeah.
Female athletes want that, and just funny, not funny, but one-off story. Like I had a couple athletes yesterday I was hanging out with that both have different injuries right now that are kind of down in the dumps about it. And we were out there at practice, and I said, "Hey, look at Skylar. Skylar's a junior this year. She went through 2 years of us trying to figure out. She had some stress fractures and couldn't figure it out, but she just kept chipping away at it and has been, like
Hmm.
you said, so positive. And now in her junior year, she's just blossoming.
Right.
She loved the sport, and so the girls get to see that as an inspiration for
Right.
somebody that loves the sport, is in it for more than just the performance of it.
Yep.
It's community for her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I mean, it just makes me feel good that we're in this sport
yeah,
still,
it's
right?
important.
Still in this sport, and that, and the work we're doing at Wildwood isn't like other people are doing great work too. So it's nice to come together and support that. So
Fun to talk about.
fun to talk about. Thanks, Robin.
Yeah.